Joshua Meyer, better known as the Cancer Philosopher. And today, I'll be giving you a brief introduction into what will be, through the course of many videos, a further introduction into the world of cancer. So this video, first of all, we're going to talk about what exactly these videos are going to be. I'm the Cancer Philosopher, but what exactly does that mean? Afterwards, we'll move into a brief discussion of what exactly cancer is, the study of cancer from the past, study of cancer today, and what the study of cancer will be in the future. Now, throughout the course of these videos, most of the contents I'll be bringing up are rooted in the book called The Emperor of All Maladies, A Biography of Cancer. I'm in the process of reading it right now, and every time I publish one of the videos, I'll have read a little bit more. So these videos, in a way, act as benchmarks of what I've been reading. Now, over time, I'll address more and more issues as the author brings it up, but even just from the beginning, so far, the book seems to be very enthralling. There's some very interesting examples that are brought up, not even from just from the field of cancer research, from science in general. And the book's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. So first of all, who am I anyways? I'm the Cancer Philosopher, I'm Joshua Meyer, but what does that really mean? So, I'm a student at the Academy for the Advancement of Science and Technology in Hackensack, New Jersey. And these videos are being made for my Philosophy of Science class, or what we like to call the science of understanding science better. After all, that's a philosophy of science theme of our course. The Emperor of All Maladies is a biography of cancer. It talks about how exactly cancer evolved and cancer research. But it's really, at a more fundamental level, how do we study cancer, what have people thought about cancer, and how have they used their thoughts in order to make scientific advancements. And after all, that's what understanding science is all about. Now, the world of cancer can be considered a quest to understand how exactly the pathogenesis of the disease occurs, different properties of the disease, elucidations of the disease, in order to finally develop treatments. As the book brings up, one of the ultimate goals, of course, with cancer is to cure it. But earlier on, many people had trouble understanding what exactly cancer was. The beginning of the book, actually, if you look at the titles of the chapters, many of them are mischaracterizations of what cancer is. So, for example, one of the chapters, as I'll discuss in a minute, talks about the initial perspective that cancer was just spoiled blood. Now, that doesn't really make much sense at this point in the 21st century. What does that mean, spoiled blood? I'll touch on that in a moment. But anyways, interestingly, of course, scientists learned from their mistakes. And a lot of cancer research was rooted in logical fallacies, was rooted in different mistakes, many things that would be considered unscientific by today's standards. So it's interesting to compare those to different philosophers of science nowadays and see how it matches up. That's maybe a focus we'll go into on later videos and connecting these. But the book also gives interesting relations to the future. So they talk about cancer research nowadays, but if you look a little bit further and you connect the different things together, then by learning from our mistakes, we can take cancer research to the next level. So now throughout my videos, I'm going to be talking about different examples. Seeing as this is an introductory video, I'm giving an introduction to all the videos that are going to come further. I'm just going to give a short introduction to what is cancer, as that's what the book talks about in the beginning. So, one of the first types of cancer that a lot of focus was being put into is known as leukemia. Leukemia comes from a Greek origin, which basically means it's a disease of the leukocytes, which are white blood cells. And leukemia is a cancer of those white blood cells. And what happens is those white blood cells keep growing and growing and growing, and there's so many of them. And that caused one of the early scientists named John Bennett to think that leukemia was just spoiled blood, like I mentioned before. He thought that perhaps it was some pus, and he was very confident in his approach. However, interestingly, this is where the philosophy of science comes into. Another scientist by the name of Rudolf Virchow, he instead said that leukemia was not spoiled blood, but rather it was what he called this isn't exactly English, but omnicellular cellular. And what he was saying is, this comes from the cell theory, that cells grow and they make more cells and more cells and more cells. And after all, that's what cancer is. Cancer is immortality of cells that keep growing. And Virchow wasn't really sure about his approach, but interesting, the way that he got to it was by renaming his disease. He took it from the separation of blood, something that sounded pretty fancy, blood being spoiled. He simply changed it away, and he just called it leukemia. It later became known as leukemia, probably from his studies, that it's not just spoiled blood. It's not just the blood, but rather it's the emia. It's the disease of the white blood cells that causes them to keep growing. Now, a few chapters later in the book, another interesting scientist that's brought up his name is Sidney Farber. Now, Sidney Farber was one of the first people to conduct experiments on cancer. What Sidney Farber hypothesized is that if we would be able to count the amount of leukemia cells, the amount of cancer cells within the blood, then after we deliver different therapeutics, different medicines, different herbs, we could count the difference in the amount of cells that are growing, and by doing so, we can assess how well a treatment has performed. And that's a very interesting thing, because experiments in cancer now are so mainstream. A lot of molecular biology is focused on that. Even in my own high school, in the Academy for Advancement in Science and Technology, there's students all the time taking cancer cells, putting different things in there, knocking down different genes, and seeing what happens to the cancer. And Sidney Farber was one of those first people to do that. And it even relates to the modern tests of cell viability, determining how many cells are alive in a flask. So Sidney Farber came up with that idea that experiments could be conducted on cancer. And that opened up the whole big field of cancer research. And not just understanding the disease, not just characterizing the disease, and not just saying what it is, like John Bennett and Rudolf Virchow, but rather this led to the next phase, which is perhaps the most essential part of cancer, conducting experiments on it, so therefore we can test out different ways of trying to repress the disease and hopefully eventually find a cure. In future videos, I hope to bring up some more examples such as these. This is just a brief introduction to what cancer is, a brief introduction to who exactly the philosopher of cancer is. And I hope you stay tuned and enjoy the rest of my videos. Thank you.